I've wasted so much time trying to connect to a phone banking executive or trying to sort out the various IVR menus. I'm honestly surprised I've ever managed to get any banking work done. Thankfully, now with the Jupiter Digital Banking app, these things are finally in the past. Their super easy to use app simplifies banking in a way we've never seen before. They have a 24/7 chat bot live on their app, which connects to a human within seconds if you need. In case of more complicated interactions, you get a ticket number which can be tracked to determine where your query or complaint is and by when it can be resolved. So check out jupiter.money to find out more or download the Jupiter app on Android and iOS to get started. Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And today with us, we have Devrath, and we're going to be talking about fitness. Now, this is somebody who's a friend of mine and who I've been following for years now. I absolutely love his approach to fitness. I'm a big fan of the way he moves, his understanding of fitness, and I've always wanted to have him on the podcast, and we are finally making it happen. So, NinjaDev, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thanks, Ash. Lovely being here.
Dev, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, to kind of start way back in the day, just like any Bangalorean, I first did my computer science engineering, right?
So, that is a mandatory thing.
Yeah, it's like you do engineering and then you figure out what you want to do with life, right? So that's exactly what happened with me. But of course, before that, I was kind of always into sports, and I also taught kickboxing part-time, and I danced with a semi-professional group. So I kind of had a little bit of movement background in me before I actually kind of got into fitness full-time. And then yeah, I did about a year and a half of the corporate life and just realized it's definitely not my scene. And the whole time that I was working with this company, I was just like sitting there and reading up fitness articles, etc. But eventually kind of made the switch into professional, the fitness industry about 11 years ago, I think. And yeah, and since then it's been great. So I'm essentially a strength and conditioning coach. That's how I started, with the intention to work with athletes and sportsmen. Did that for a while. But now I co-own a gym called the Academy of Strength. So it's a functional training and a strength and conditioning facility, a movement space as well. And I also have an online training company with my co-founder called Sweaty Ninjas. And so essentially, these are the two things that keep me busy. And then, of course, I'm also an animal flow master instructor. So that and IFA certification. So that's another organization called International Fitness and Aerobics Academy. So I'm a master trainer for that as well. So I kind of do certifications and workshops in different parts of India. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I do. That's my bread and butter.
Dude, that's a ton of things that you've done, huh? Like, doesn't it ever get confusing? Doesn't it like turn into bhelpuri or khichdi in your mind? Because each of them have a different like philosophy behind, movement and strength and all of that, right?
So when I think about it, I feel like underlying it's the same thing. Like if I have to kind of get into something in fitness, maybe there are certain pillars which are very common. Just to give you an example, like I probably will not be somebody who will coach bodybuilding, even though I've done it and I've had experience in it, not competitively, but as a way of training. So there are certain things in terms of the workshops and the way that I teach in the gym, or the way that my team or my trainers teach in the gym, or what we kind of impart even in the online education is very aligned, I would say. So even if I do get into another vertical in the future, it would be in those same lines. So yeah, it does sound like a lot, but it's somehow kind of all come together.
And how did you decide on these aspects of fitness that you want to focus on? Like this is the thing that actually makes sense when it comes to fitness. Like obviously share like what are your philosophies behind it, but like how did you reach those?
I think just through experience, Ash, because when I started, just like most guys, the intention was to go to the gym, lift heavy weights, get jacked, get big. And I did that. Like my normal body weight, which I am right now, is about 70. I'm kind of toggle between 60 and 70 kgs, 68 and 70. And there was this point about 10 years ago when I was, into hardcore lifting and I was eating this bodybuilding diet, etc. And I put on about 12 or 14 kgs of just like muscles. I was like 82 or 84. So I felt big. I looked strong and I looked big, but I didn't feel great. So as I mentioned earlier, like because I came from a little bit of a movement background, I felt like the way that I starting to move, it wasn't the same. Like I've lost that, the mobility, the fluidity in me, and sometimes you feel a lot older than you actually are when you're packing on that much muscle and you're kind of focusing on just that one aspect of fitness, which is strength. So that kind of got me.
But strength and hypertrophy, that's basically what you were focusing on.
Correct. Yes. So that kind of got me thinking, and then it got me to explore other, areas of fitness, specifically mobility and movement. So I started exploring a little bit of yoga, and I still do it, but more like a self-practice. And yoga for me is a lot more spiritual than actually a physical practice. So that's a constant. But then I started exploring other movement training disciplines, and Animal Flow is something that I came across. I saw Mike Fitch, the creator of Animal Flow, kind of one of his videos, and I was like mind blown. Like, what the hell? I want to move like this. And yeah, so that's where I feel like it gradually happened, because the way that I started to understand what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and over the years, and I'm also the kind of person who looks at fitness more from a long-term perspective. So if you're going to tell me, okay, I'm going to make this many gains right now in the next 1 month, and that wouldn't interest me so much as compared to if you say, okay, I can continue to do these things, and then that's going to keep me healthy and active when I'm 70, 80 years old. So I'm kind of finding that balance, and I'm still doing it. It's not like I've figured it out, but I'm still trying to find that balance where I can still look aesthetically pleasing, but at the same time kind of take care of my body in such a way that I can continue to do what I'm doing right now in 20, 30 years or more.
So have you figured out what this definition of fitness is for you?
I feel like it evolves. Like it's not a constant. Like if I think about it now, like every, let's say 2 years, 3 years, a person's definition of fitness changes, and I think it should. I don't think you should kind of restrict yourself and say, okay, this is, because I see a lot of people do that, and sometimes what happens is, if you don't evolve with the time, and everything's changing, right? You're getting older, your body is changing. There's new science that's coming up. A lot of people are telling you what they were so sure about what was working about 5 years ago is right now possibly telling you exactly not to do.
Correct.
So I feel like there is no fixed definition of fitness, but if I had to just like maybe sum it up in a few words, definitely the first one would be longevity. Second one would be mindful, when it comes to both, of course, training as well as nutrition. And something that basically keeps you going, like something that you can really enjoy doing, because if you're going to kill yourself in the gym every other day, you're not going to do that for too long.
Let's talk about that. I think that is a very important point that you raised. So one is longevity, of course, is super important. Having fun with what you're doing, but this part about killing yourself in the gym, right? We've got this entire mindset of go hard, go home. And if you spend any time on Instagram, you're going to be bombarded by push it and then like sweat till you drop, those kind of memes. What is your theory on that? Because that is how people typically end up judging a good workout, right?
Yeah. So I think that's come from, as you said, a lot of the stuff on the internet, and it's not that it started just a few years ago. It's always been there. Like if you see like your veteran bodybuilders like your Ronnie Coleman
Lightweight
lifting.
baby.
Yeah, exactly, right? So he's lifting some crazy amount of weight, and he's constantly giving you these motivational kind of words like lightweight baby, as you said. And so I feel like people aspire to be like these guys, but what people don't understand is, firstly, these guys are freaks of nature. Firstly, they're blessed with certain things which not everybody is. Right. Second thing is, they are professionally doing this. Like for them, it is literally go home, go hard or go home, because if they don't do it, then they're going to lose their job, they're going to lose their titles, everything. So it's okay to aspire to kind of train like that and really go crazy. Like even, for example, CrossFit right now, which has been huge from the last about maybe 10 years. The ones that who are really pushing their bodies are the ones who are competitive CrossFit athletes. And these guys are training like 8 hours a day, and their whole life revolves around that. It's okay to do that if that's your professional, if it's your profession and if you're doing that for a living. But then if you're going to take like an average Joe and get him to the gym and ask him to kind of lift heavy, put him in a competitive environment, do multiple reps at a time with no rest, and do it till you puke and stuff like that, it's not going to work. I mean, it will probably kind of, as I said, as you mentioned also, it makes for a good video, but I don't really subscribe to that kind of fitness. I mean, I did do, as I mentioned earlier, like I've tried pretty much every form of fitness out there. So I've done bodybuilding, as I mentioned. I was a CrossFit coach, and I worked in a CrossFit gym for a couple of years. So I did do the heavy lifting, the high intensity stuff, and in fact even once kind of submitted videos for CrossFit Open, etc. So, and I saw how it really screwed up my body. Just in a small fraction of like maybe a few weeks, I could see
what happened?
Like I tweaked my back, and then there was like another hamstring pull, and because as I said, like you're lifting almost sub-maximal weight in a very short period of time, and you're trying to outdo every other person in the world, right? So obviously form's out the window, and are you really prepared for that kind of lifting and training? Maybe not. And just to kind of add to the fact that most Indians are not as gifted as, let's say, an average American, not because of genetics. Genetics is something that you can always kind of work against, but because when Americans grow up in school, they start sport very early. They have like a weight training class, they have a gym class, etc. But whereas I mean, I'm sure you had the same experience. For us, PT class was just like stupid drills where we just move hands up and down, and that's all. And like for an hour we would do this, and that's not really do anything. So there's no foundational strength for most people who who, let's say, get into a CrossFit gym back in India. And I saw that firsthand with a lot of clients who are trying to be this person that they're seeing on YouTube, but then their bodies are supporting it. So I would say I wouldn't say it's bad. I would just say that it's not for everybody. So yeah,
I completely agree with you. In school, it was almost a joke what PT class was, and even later on, when I started going to the gym, everyone would make fun of me, saying that, "Acha, you're becoming a bodybuilder now." Right? Gyms were for bodybuilders. It was almost that set mentality. Like gym for fitness didn't even exist as a concept. That this was before running even was as big as it is now. But nobody did anything for fitness for their bodies, and I think at least we're seeing that transition taking place in India. That's a huge step forward. And I know many people who are listening to this podcast probably aren't doing things for their fitness, right? They are saying they want to, but they've not got around to doing it. What is that mind space, or that space that people should start to approach fitness from? Like, how should a beginner come in? What should their mind space be? Should there be go hard, go home? Should it be something else? Should it be I will go for a walk? Where do you think people should start this?
I think like if they are a complete beginner, it definitely helps to get professional help. As expensive as it might be to kind of take up a personal trainer, for example, I think it's absolutely worth it, even if it's just for a few sessions in the beginning. It could just maybe be like 3 sessions, right? And try and get the most out of those 3 sessions by understanding the basics, understanding how exactly you need to kind of form your workout. How should you go about that path of yours, which is obviously very new to you. Definitely no go hard or go home for a beginner. That's one of the things that will definitely put you off, because you're not going to feel great if you go all out in the beginning, and your body is just not going to cooperate. And the first feeling that you're obviously going to get is that working out sucks, right? Because you're not going to like it. So I would say in the beginning, do something that you enjoy, do something that's really easy, and then you slowly build up the intensity from there. How do you build up the intensity? Now, again, that is something that one of your trainers or your coaches can help you with. But it could just be understanding, okay, I've done this many reps today. Next week, I can maybe increase that a little bit. Maybe I took this much of rest between my sets this time. Next time, I'm going to take a little less rest. Maybe I worked out for about 30 minutes. Maybe tomorrow I can run for 35. So it's just about making these small increments. And it's also very important to kind of, I would say, like if you're working out by yourself, like this is something that I tell people, a lot of my clients as well, especially animal flow and movement based kind of exercises, is that record yourself. So even if you're doing regular functional training, for example, just take like short clips, videos of yourself whenever you're training, because that will give you firstly a lot really good feedback, firstly in terms of your form, but also you will then compare yourself in about a week, in a couple of weeks, and you'll see how you've changed. Because what happens in the beginning is you don't have that experience to actually see, okay, I've improved. It just might feel like, yeah, I've been doing this for like now a month. I started a month ago and I don't feel like I've changed. And sometimes aesthetical changes might take some time, but just the way that you move, certain form that you've kind of corrected yourself, and the fact that maybe you're now able to kind of last a little longer than before. So kind of tracking these small things will really make a big change. And I feel like, those are those small milestones which will keep you going. So yeah, I think tracking is vital.
Tracking is vital, either what weights you're lifting or your form in whatever it is that you're doing. Some to show that that progress is taking place. Without
Yeah.
seeing that progress, it becomes very disheartening, to
Yes.
continue on this journey. I love it.
Yeah.
I remember when we started off working out, we just had our camera phones and no tripods and stuff like that existed. So we used
Yeah.
to use our shoes to keep the phone in and record using the shoe as a
Well,
tripod.
I still use water bottles. They
Still,
work
yeah,
great.
there you go. So anything around you so that you get that feedback. I know like gyms that have mirrors, but still in a mirror you have to like move your neck to one side to look at yourself. Doesn't work.
No.
Use a phone, record yourself, and then see the progress that takes place in the form that you have.
In
Absolutely
fact,
love it.
in my gym, I've made sure there are no mirrors, zero
Oh, no
mirrors in the gym.
mirrors.
No mirrors. The only mirror
No,
is in the bathroom. So you can finish your workout and go check yourself out.
uh,
The
and then
problem,
go
the
mire
biggest
yourself.
problem, the biggest problem with mirrors is that, like you said, everybody, if there's a mirror, people are going to want to look at themselves. And then you have to position your body in a certain way for a certain exercise, and your neck and your head is part of your body, right? So the minute you're going to try to look at yourself, even and you'll see this happening every day in multiple gyms, is like people will be standing in front of a mirror and doing deadlifts, for example, right? So they're
Correct.
lifting really, really heavy weights. They're keeping the rest of their spine, their thoracic and your lumbar spine, all of that neutral. But the cervical spine, which is your neck, basically, is always kind of cranked up, because as they're going down, they're still trying to look at themselves in the mirror,
So
right?
all
So
perfect right up till your neck, and then
yeah,
it goes for a toss.
and that's one of the common injuries that happen, kind of tweaking your neck or your upper traps getting too tight, etc., because you're going into that too much extension in the neck. So yeah, so using the mirror is something that is not ideal, in my opinion.
So Dave, right in the beginning of the podcast, you told me about these fundamental pillars that you've built. Your ideology on, or the way that you're structuring your business and the various aspects of it. What are these pillars?
So one is, of course, what I mentioned earlier, which is longevity.
Hmm.
And that was one of the primary reasons for introducing mobility and animal flow and those kind of practices into um, the routine that we teach at the gym itself. So it's not that you just come and do your strength and your endurance training, but you also make sure that you take care of your joint health, which might not make you sweat buckets, so it might not like leave you super sore, but it does a lot in terms of making sure that your workouts are that much more effective when you come back the next day. Or if you do let's say a little bit of mobility training before you actually start to lift weights, you will see how your range of motion is increased. It's going to keep you going for longer, etc. So they're not they're not fancy looking workouts, but they are the ones that will actually keep you going for longer.
So how do
So
they help in longevity? As in, they prevent damage? How do
yeah,
they work?
yeah. So essentially, when you're kind of, let's say, lifting really heavy weights, just to give you an example, and if you're constantly doing it at a limited range of motion, then what's happening is you're eventually going to kind of keep shortening the length of every muscle, right? So in order for your muscles to be healthy, you also have to lengthen them. So it can't just be like, okay, I'm going to continuously do a certain exercise and work on strengthening and, hypertrophy and kind of getting that, let's say, for example, the bicep peak, right? So if you see the bicep curl done in a typical bodybuilding fashion, it's a very, they don't express full range of motion. It's a very short range and it's multiple reps, and then they constantly keep going. So there is no concept of, okay, how do I improve the range of motion in that elbow joint or my shoulder joint, etc. So by kind of working on your mobility and opening up the joints for the muscles to go through that full range of motion, then yes. So one is, as I said, your muscles there's lesser chance to get injured, because the healthy length of the muscle is maintained. And pretty much, and I've also realized that flexibility training is lacking in most people, unless, of course, you're in the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say you're a yoga instructor and you're working a lot on your flexibility, but that can also be a deterrent in the sense that you've not worked enough on your strength and your mobility. So getting stronger in end ranges, for example. So if I get into a split, it might mean that I'm flexible, but it might not mean that I'm necessarily, my mobility is great. I might not have the kind of strength in that end range. So kind of finding that gap between the two, where you're working on your strength, but you're also working on your mobility, keeping in mind that you also have to be flexible. So I can't just do mobility training and work on my joints, but I also have to maybe do some very orthodox static stretches at the end of the workout. So one is this, with respect to training, kind of maintaining longevity. I think that's one definite pillar. And of course, that carries, that concept kind of carries into nutrition as well, right? Okay. So, you start looking at what are the things that you can eat, which is going to keep me healthy in the long run, as opposed to, okay, I need to eat this much protein every day to maintain my muscle mass, which is great for your aesthetics, but also, is it going to help you in the long run? And do you really need this much of protein in your body? So you kind of try and figure out what kind of a percentage of macros works for you, for your lifestyle. And then another thing which I would say is paramount is just being mindful and aware. So how does that translate to training? Something as simple as mind-muscle connection. And I could do the same workout. Let's say I'm running on the treadmill and I can just stare at the television screen and run for like an hour, and I'm still burning my calories.
Or talking to someone on the phone. Nowadays, video calls on the treadmill are like the thing.
Exactly. Or like, I do like a heavy set of, let's say, squats, and then while I'm resting, I'm just looking at my phone and I'm completely switched off. So that's something that we don't allow in the gym. You can't just like, in the middle of the workout, go check your phone, etc. I mean, not that, we lock up their phones or anything, but it's kind of understood, that's the kind of culture that we've built.
Nice.
Where if you're coming in to work out, like for that 1 hour, you're completely there. So it doesn't matter if you're resting or if you're in the middle of a set. So that kind of promotes that mindfulness, and I feel that also kind of slowly translates onto the rest of the 23 that and outside of the gym, because you're constantly talking about these things. So obviously, you kind of put a seed in there in their subconscious mind. So, when they're out there, they're always thinking about, okay, what's the right posture to sit in? Okay, if I've been sitting for too long, then okay, this is a reminder for me to get up, maybe just walk a bit, maybe stretch. What is the kind of food that's going into my body? Is this going to really help me in the long run? Stuff like that. So I would say that's another big pillar.
Hello, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On the Filter Coffee podcast, India Film Project founder Ritam Bhatnagar shares his thoughts on the creator movement with Karthik. On the Wire Talks, Siddharth and Professor Sasanka Pereira talk about the current crisis in Sri Lanka. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explores the two different approaches to management, top-down and bottom-up. On Say No to Drama, Chetna explains how spirituality is not devoid of logic. And on Marathi Khidkitun, the Deshmukhs admire the works of multifaceted Marathi author Gopal Neelkant Dandekar. We've got some exciting news for you. IVM Podcasts has just launched its merch and our first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcasts website and click on the shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: SBI Life Insurance, Jupiter, a digital banking app, Capgemini, get the future you want, Intel V Pro, built for business, and Intel, future banao wonderful with Intel-powered laptops.
And I love the way that you put the word academy in your, in the way that you've created the facility, because academy is a place where you study, you practice. And I think the way
Yes.
that you've described it, it's all these things put together. You're constantly learning the different kinds of movements and you're constantly changing with them.
Yeah. So there are the two main reasons why we named it the Academy of Strength, the word academy. Like you mentioned, one other thing is that, people don't just come to just sweat it out there. It's more about, it's almost like they're getting a course in how to train, how to eat, how to live. So there's a constant learning for the member. So every hour that they spend there, there's something that they take back, which they can then apply. Another reason is, of course, we also train the trainers in the gym. So we have our own internship program where, wannabe coaches can come in and kind of understand both the practical as well as the theoretical aspect of training and nutrition, and basically kind of be prepared to take up a certification and then eventually become a trainer or a coach. Yeah.
Fascinating. Now, okay, take an example of like the way that I like to train, right? I love the gym hypertrophy kind of exercises, right?
Right.
Now, how would I incorporate all these other aspects? Like, should I be incorporating yoga? Should I be incorporating animal flow? How should I put these things in to the way that I train?
Okay. It's a good question. So I love hypertrophy too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, so when I say I'm into mobility and animal flow, I realized that because I did that for a while, where I completely stopped lifting weights and I went the complete body weight route. Did that for about 6 months or for quite a while, almost a year. And yes, I did move really well, but I felt like I was losing a lot of muscle, and absolute strength, how much weight I can lift, of course, was also kind of coming down, and I didn't like that. So that's why, the whole idea of finding that balance between the two. But I would say, like, if somebody needs to figure that out, I for sure, like I said earlier, work with a trainer and do an assessment in the beginning. And a simple assessment. It doesn't have to be you don't have to go to like a physiotherapist or anything. Like, a qualified trainer should be able to tell you what are you lacking in. Some simple exercises and stretches will tell you whether you're strong or weak in certain areas, whether your posture needs to be corrected if there are some imbalances, and if you are kind of too tight in certain areas. So then if I can figure this out, then I can plan my week and my phases accordingly. So let's say hypertrophy is something that I do not want to stop doing because that's what I absolutely love. Do that. And let's say you figure out, okay, 4 days a week, if I'm going to do hypertrophy and that's something that I really enjoy and I don't want to compromise that, then look at what you can do on the other 2 or 3 days. So maybe you can fit in after what your trainer or your person who's done the assessment has kind of given you an idea. Now, okay, my hamstrings are super tight, my hip flexors are super tight, my upper body is fairly okay, but my lower body is the problem area. Then I know, okay, I need to incorporate maybe some static stretches for my lower body in those other 2 days. I also need to include some mobility work to kind of improve my range of motion in the hip joint, for example. So if you can figure out, okay, this is the balance that works for me, then you can try it. And again, you're never going to find a perfect plan. You just have to kind of jump into it, do it, see if it works, and then if it doesn't, switch things up.
And keep
But
evolving it like that.
yeah, exactly. And but yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing something which you don't enjoy. Like if you're saying you're somebody who likes lifting, you should lift, but you just have to understand what are the pros and cons of doing that, and then try and reduce the cons as much as possible. Just that's what strength and conditioning also is about, right? So if you're working with, let's say, an athlete, and if you're working with a tennis player who's a right-handed who's right-handed, then that his right hand is the dominant side, and that's the one that's constantly used. So probably that hand is something that maybe I need to work more on external rotation on that side. So if I'm doing, let's say, 5 reps on this side, I'll probably do 10 reps on that side. So that's just about the reason why the athlete or professional athlete is able to do that is because he's gone through that assessment, and some expert has told him, okay, if you don't do this backup work of strength and conditioning and kind of working on certain muscles which are weak right now, then you're not going to play longer. Okay, you're going to end up with an injury. So the same thing happens, but in a slightly less intensity with the rest of us who are not professional athletes.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you in a spot and maybe be a little politically incorrect. Now, you obviously train a lot of trainers, and you've seen different kinds of trainers come to the gym. How do people choose a trainer? Like people are listening to this and saying, okay, Devrath told me I'm gonna go and get professional help. Now, how do you evaluate whether this dude knows what he's talking about, or is he
Right.
coming from, mera khud ka experience hai, or is he like YouTube University? Where is
Yeah.
he coming from, and how would you evaluate? Like, are there little checks that you can tell our listeners?
So that is a challenge,
Yeah,
especially now that
like
social
everybody
media
is a
is.
fitness trainer. You see stuff
Yeah,
on Instagram, and I'm seeing atrocious form. But
yeah,
I'm training like people like how like train
yeah.
yourself first. Like, so how do you get to that mindset?
Again, I might sound a bit harsh,
Mm,
but a couple of things that I would see if I was going to train with somebody. One is, of course, if he practices what he preaches, right?
correct.
So I can say a lot of things, and if I'm not really following it myself, then it makes it a little hard for me to trust that person. Having said that, of course, he could be somebody he or she could be past their prime and maybe still in the industry, and they've done whatever they had to do in their age, but they have the experience, and because of that experience, if they're speaking out of that experience, great, that's still okay. But if you're, let's say, in your 20s or your 30s and you're talking about certain things, but if you're still not putting it into practice, then that's a red flag for me. That's number one. Number two, what you need to watch out for, which I'm not super particular about, but which will definitely help, is obviously certifications. Look at always ask, and you have every right to ask, because you're paying for this person, right? So you ask what certification they've done, and if a simple Google search will tell you a few things about that certification, and if it's really an internationally recognized one, does it teach enough for that person to understand even basics of human anatomy, biomechanics, etc. But having said that, of course, there are a lot of trainers out there I know who do not care about certifications but are still great trainers. But of course, that's that's something that will take a little bit of homework to understand who those guys are. The people
And
are
that's
like,
rare in any case. So like hopefully you will not be coming across such people right in the beginning
yeah,
of your journey.
yeah. So you'd rather stick to somebody who these factors that you can kind of easily look at and say, okay, this is somebody who I can work with. And of course, the third one is how professional is your trainer. He could have all the certifications, he could know everything that he needs to know under the sun, but if he's not professional, in the sense that it could be in terms of punctuality, or it could be in terms of um, certain things, there are certain parameters that you want to kind of make sure that, especially if you're working with somebody, because you're essentially entrusting this person with your body. It's not a project which is something external. He's literally telling you exactly what you need to do to get better body and mind. So a little bit of homework is definitely due. But at the same time, again, I would say don't try to get everything right the first time. I personally had to go through 2 or 3 kind of trainers to then find, not that, I did too much of personal training. I did go through a couple of them in the beginning, and I feel like I probably wouldn't train with them right now, but what they taught me back in the day really helped me at that point. So you will go through a couple of trainers before you find this is what I want. So I would say it's okay. Sometimes if you get it a little wrong, it's okay, but you'll figure out what you really need. And sometimes when you find the right trainer, you will know, like there will be a connection. You will know, you will vibe with them, and then somewhere you'll know, okay, this is exactly what I was looking for. It might take a little bit of time, but you'll figure it out. But there is a little bit of homework that needs to happen from the client's side to be able to
even the softer skills, right? Can I have a conversation with this person? I'm going to be spending 1 hour every day. Does he or she make me feel good about myself at the end of the day, right? Especially if you're going to meet them first thing in the morning, like what is the rest of your day going to feel like after that? So all those things are important too.
Yeah, and sometimes you're in touch throughout the day. Like they're probably telling you, what your grocery shopping needs to look like. They're advising you on your sleep patterns and your recovery, etc. So it's not just that 1 hour also. So you're right. Yeah. So having a really good relationship with your trainer is paramount.
This whole fitness industry, people find it very confusing, right? Like everyone's telling you to do different kinds of things. And like I started the conversation by saying, you learned so much. How do you focus only on one aspect without getting confused by so many other things that are going on? And this is something that I hear a lot of people saying that, Ashdin, there's so much information. I have no clue what is misleading, what is good quality information when it comes to all of this. The question is that, how do you start sifting through this? Is it all trial and error? Are there certain ways to judge what is the kind of information that's coming to you that is good quality versus not?
I would say don't look for quality fitness tips on social media.
Okay.
Unless you already have been following somebody and a person has a certain amount of credibility and experience, etc. And if you're following this particular individual because of different reasons, and then he's putting up these short maybe videos or whatever, and now reels, for example, like in 30 seconds, pretty much teaching a lot, then it's fine. But I would definitely not advise just scrolling through Instagram, for example, looking for fitness advice by random individuals, because the intention for somebody putting up that content could be something completely different, and you don't know what it is.
Correct.
So I would say what I did as well when in the beginning of my fitness journey is I kind of did a little bit of sifting through different fitness channels. And I kind of, obviously, because I was also at that point studying, and so I kind of knew the right from the wrong. I had that general sense of somebody who actually knows what he's saying, or if he's just a good seller. So once you do that, then once you kind of zero in on, okay, these, let's say 5 individuals who really know what they're talking about. And it's also good to kind of find people who specialize in a particular thing. As opposed to this one guy who talks about everything under the sun. Finding somebody who's really, let's say you want to get into running, then find a running coach and somebody who has, let's say, a YouTube channel on that and speaks specifically on that. Because if he's going to be putting out so much content on just running, then he's doing his homework, and he's studying that one particular topic really well. So that helps. So yeah, look for people who specialize. Like I personally, I'm somebody who's like jack of all trades. I love exploring different things. One day,
did you ever get into running?
For a bit, because I got into obstacle racing. So,
okay.
But I
get all the devil's races and stuff like that. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I did a few of them. But the thing is, what I found out from certain assessments and like understanding my body type, etc., I'm actually built for long distance running. If I actually got into long distance running, I might actually do well. but I don't like it. See, that's why you have to find that balance again.
Correct.
I might end up really doing really well and competing and winning also in a few years if I start training, but
Mm.
am I really going to
What's
be
the
happy
point?
doing it every day? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I need to
Mm.
figure. Like, I don't mind a 5K. Sometimes I don't
Mm.
mind pushing myself running a 10K. I'll still enjoy it, but I can't do it every single day. So like that, like I have few things that I really am interested in, and I kind of dive into it. I do it for a while, but I would much rather suggest people, especially if they're starting off, to not kind of spread the net too far, and just kind of pick few things. Let's say I'm going to focus, and sometimes what really works for people is just like having a let's say a timeline. Let's say 90 days. These 3 months I'm going to really focus on myself and my fitness, and in those 3 months I'm going to focus on these aspects of fitness, as opposed to saying, okay, that guy's mobility is great, I want to get there. Oh, this guy's super strong, I want to start lifting heavy. Oh, this guy runs so fast, I'm going to go and do some sprints. Then you're going to overwhelm yourself, and it's also that much harder to kind of then follow that much information online about all of these different aspects of fitness. So maybe choose two. Maybe say, okay, I'm going to work on my strength, I'm also going to work on my flexibility, and these two guys are super good at it, I'm going to follow them. So I would say, lesser content, but more specific content really helps.
I like that, because otherwise you just keep going after the next,
Yeah.
glittery object, and you end up
Yes,
nowhere. So I like your
exactly.
idea of 90 days, focus on just one thing, don't get
Yeah.
distracted by anything else, stick to it, and you will end up seeing a result because of that.
Yeah. And like we spoke about earlier, track it. So in
Track.
those 90 days, at the end of the 3 months, you'll see you've actually progressed if you track it.
Dave, I think these are super tips, because I'm really looking forward to our next podcast where we're going to break down this. And I have a few questions I want to ask you on consistency, because I've seen you being so consistent over the years. So that's something that I want to definitely ask you on.
Yeah.
Dave, anything about this fitness journey that you want to share that we haven't covered with our listeners,
My fitness journey.
or the fitness journey that they might be on? Any few parting words of wisdom for them?
Mm. Mm, I would say keep it simple. Don't complicate things. Because there's so much information. Like, for example, if somebody really wants to eat healthy right now, there's somebody is doing an intermittent fasting, somebody's doing a paleo, somebody's doing a keto, somebody's gluten free, somebody's, so
Carnivore.
yeah, it really overwhelms you, and somewhere you question yourself, thinking like, am I doing the right thing? uh, unless there's something drastically going wrong with your health, you don't need to change much.
Hmm.
Okay, if there is like a red flag, if you've done some tests and if you really need to change something, yes, then that's when you might need to completely do a U-turn and change the way you eat. But if you're healthy right now, if you're waking up not feeling like shit, then you can just worry about small changes, right? So if maybe your goal is just to lose some weight, that's okay, it's not the end of the world, and it's a small thing, and it's something that's very achievable, and you just make small changes. Like, is something as simple as, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I've been used to eating, let's say, something sweet after every meal, because it's like a dessert that I have to have after every meal. You
Correct.
just say, okay, I'm not going to do that for every meal, I'm going to do that only after lunch. And maybe if I was having one big piece of, let's say, gulab jamun or whatever, I'm going to reduce that to half. But I have to stick to that.
Mhm.
And I have to say, okay, I'm going to consistently do this. Again, fix a time frame. I'm going to do this for 30 days and let's see what happens. So you might, after 30 days, you might feel like, oh, wow, okay, I don't feel like eating that sweet anymore after dinner, because now, your body is feeling like, because sometimes when you go off certain kinds of food is when you realize that your body actually likes that. Your gut actually likes that.
Wanted
It's
it,
just
yes.
that it's just that the tongue it gives you immediate feedback. It immediately tells you, wow, this tastes good. So you're ignoring all of the other things which is happening inside your body. So
Mhm.
just kind of making small changes and giving it time for your body to adapt, you will automatically your body starts to reject some of the things that actually doesn't serve it. And you
Fair.
don't realize it unless you go off it. So same with training, keep it simple, small changes at a time, and don't try to kind of change everything at once, which is going to really overwhelm you and then make you quit. So yeah, that's probably the simplest advice to
That
follow.
last one was spot on, right? Just like don't try and overwhelm yourself. Just keep it simple, be consistent, and that is the way to get the change in.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the Habit Coach podcast. How can people reach out to you? How can people connect with you? Continue this conversation.
The best way to reach out to me is on Instagram. My tag is ninja.dev on Insta. So yeah, if there's anything fitness related, if you hit me up there,
and your online classes, where can people check out all the cool stuff that you're doing?
So sure. So my gym is called Academy of Strength. On Instagram, it's academy.of.strength. And that's if you live in Bangalore. We are in Indranagar, and we are opening Whitefield in about a couple of weeks. So those are the two options for people in Bangalore. But if you are anywhere else, then we have an online setup. It's called Sweaty Ninjas on Instagram. And that's where we kind of take people through like a 6-week journey of online training, both training as well as nutrition. Yeah.
Fantastic. Lovely. We should have actually put the podcast on our Kannada podcast, which we have on the Habit Coach, because that would have got everyone from Bangalore on it. Lovely. I can't wait for our next conversation. Thank you so much, Dev.
Awesome, Ash. Bye-bye.
Bye.